Is it hard to access affordable, healthy food? Then listen carefully. Darrell Addison, an African-American inventor, has patented a process for growing food on demand. He called it Torpedo Pot. Torpedo Pot is a fully automated flower pot that gives you control over your plant's environment. All you do is add soil, seeds, and plants to the flower pot and watch it grow. Yes, Torpedo Pot grows the rest. Visit www.torpedopot.com.
Much commotion has been made recently about slavery as entertainment in movies like Django Unchained. But lost in the discussion is slavery as history and the simple fact that it was an economic system which seized the economic know-how of Africans in order to construct unimaginable wealth in North America, in Europe, and throughout the Western Hemisphere. Wealth from slave trade took Western Europe from being one of the world's poorest regions to its wealthiest and most powerful in under a century. Though sadistic and macabre, the plain truth is that slavery was unprecedented economic juggernaut whose impact is still lived by each one of us daily, even up to date. Consequently, here is a list of 9 things everyone should know about the economic roots of slavery. Number 1. Slavery laid the foundation for the modern international economic system. The massive infrastructure required to move 8 to 10 million Africans halfway around the world and built entire cities in England and France, such as Liverpool, Manchester, and name it, was also a key to London's emergence as a global capital of commerce and spurred New York's rise as center of finance. The industry to construct, fund, staff, and administer the thousands of ships which made close to 50,000 individuals' voyages was a lone Herculean task. The international financial and destruction network required to coordinate, maintain, and profit from slavery set the framework for the modern global economy. And number 2, Africans' economic skills were a leading reason for their enslavement. Africans possessed unique expertise which Europeans indeed required to make their colonial ventures successful. Africans knew how to grow and cultivate crops in tropical and semi-tropical climates. African rice growers, for instance, were captured in order to bring their agricultural knowledge to America's sea islands and those in the Caribbean. Many Western African civilizations possessed goldsmiths and expert metal workers on a grand scale. These slaves were snatched one by one to work in Spanish and Portuguese gold and silver mines throughout Central and South America. And number 3, African know-how transformed slave economies into some of the wealthiest in the planet. The fruits of the slave trade funded the growth of global empires. The greatest source of wealth for Imperial France was the white gold of sugar produced by Africans in Haiti. More riches flowed to Britain from the slavery economy of Jamaica than all of the original American 13 colonies combined. Those resources underwrote the Industrial Revolution and vast improvement in Western European economic infrastructure. Number 4. Until it was destroyed by the Civil War, slavery made American South the richest and most powerful region in America. Slavery was a national enterprise, but economic and political center of gravity during the US's first incarnation as slave republic was the South. This was true even during the colonial era. Virginia was its richest colony, and George Washington was one of its wealthiest people because of his slaves. The majority of the new country's presidents and Supreme Court justices were Southerners. However, the invasion of the cotton gin took the Southern nation economic dominance and transformed it into a global phenomenon. British demand for American cotton made the southern stretch of the Mississippi River, the Silicon Valley of its era, the single largest concentration of America's millionaires was gathered in plantations along the Mississippi banks. The first and only president of the Confederacy, Jefferson Davis, was a Mississippi millionaire slave owner, a slaveholder. Number 5. Defense of slavery, modern taxes, was pivotal to America's declaration of independence. The South had long resisted Northern calls to leave the British Empire. That is because the South sold most of its slave-produced products to Britain and relied on the British Navy to protect the slave trade. But court case in England changed all of that. In 1775, a British court ruled that slaves could not be held in United Kingdom against their will. Fearing that the ruling would apply to the American colonies, the southern planters swung behind the northern push for greater autonomy. In 1776, 1 year later, America left its former colonial master. The issue of slavery was so powerful that it changed the course of history. Number 6, the brutalization and physiological torture of slaves was designed to ensure that plantations stayed in the black financially. Slave revolts and acts of sabotage were relatively common on southern plantations as economic enterprises. The destruction in production was bad for business. Over time, a system of operation emerged to keep things humming along. This centered on singling out slaves for public torture who had either participated in acts of defiance or who tended towards non-compliance. In fact, the most uncooperative slaves were sent to institutions such as the Sugar House in Charleston, where cruelty was used to elicit cooperation. Slavery's most inhuman aspects were just another tool to guarantee the bottom line. And number 7, the economic success of former slaves during Reconstruction led to the rise of the Ku Klux Klan. In less than 10 years after the end of slavery, blacks created thriving communities and had gained political power, including governorship and state seats across the South. Former slaves such as Atlanta's Alonzo Hannon had even become millionaires in the post-war period. But the move towards black economic empowerment had upset the old economic order. Former planters organized themselves into white citizens' council and created an armed wing, the Ku Klux Klan, to undermine black economic institutions and to force blacks into sharecropping and unfair terms. Isabel Wilkerson's Pulitzer Prize-winning book, The Warmth of Outer Suns, details the targeting of black individuals as well as the entire black community for acts of terror whose purpose was to enforce economic apartheid. And number 9, the desire to maintain economic operation is why the South was one of the most anti-tax regions of the nation. Before the Civil War, the South routinely blocked national infrastructure projects. These plans, focused on northern and western states, would have moved non-slave goods to market quickly and cheaply. The South worried that investment would increase the power of the free labor economy and hurt their own, which was based on slavery. Moreover, the South was vehemently opposed to taxes, even to improve the lives of non-slaveholding white citizens. The first public school in the North, Boston Latin, opened its doors in the mid-1600s. The first public school in the South opened 200 years later. Maintenance of slavery was the South's top priority, to the detriment of everything else. And number 9, last but indeed not the least and not the last for the final course, many firms on Wall Street made fortunes from funding the slave trade. Investment in slavery was one of the most profitable economic activities throughout most of New York's 350-year history. Much of the financing of the slave economy flowed through New York banks. Marquess names such as J.P. Morgan Chase and New York Life all profited greatly from slavery. Lehman Brothers, one of the Wall Street's largest firms until 2008, got its start in the slave economy of Alabama. Slavery was so important to the city that New York was one of most pro-slavery urban municipalities in the North. This is just 9 of the many things they don't teach us at school. What else do you know that you can as well share with us in the comment section? My name is Osie The Born Child, and thank you so much for tuning in to African Diaspora News channel and African Diaspora News Insider. And hey, please don't forget to subscribe. I'll be seeing you in another video, but until then, let's meet in the comment section. Love you all. Bye-bye.